Bagged Milk joins us, and he's going to help us preview tonight's game against the Edmonton Oilers. Bagged, how are you doing today?
Oh, boys, I'm just happy this never-ending preseason is finally over. Like, one more game to get through. Who cares what the results are? Let's just hope everybody makes it through early. Like, there is no reason that this should be going on this long.
Has there been a preseason? This is a question for the entire group. Has there been a preseason that has gone as poorly as this one let's just start with the guys that are all injured. Has there ever been a preseason where this many guys got injured? Like, I don't think there has been.
And it's not just like the volume of guys getting hurt, too. It's the key pieces on teams getting hurt and banged up in meaningless games. It drives me nuts. Like, how many of the Canucks played? The Oilers played 8, which is too many by half.
Yeah. I think there's been 6 out here, 6 or 7.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Like, it's just so annoying. I get you're just like gouging at this point where it's like, yeah, let's get some extra money coming in from some meaningless preseason games and open up the opportunity for your star players to get hurt in a meaningless hockey game. But we're almost done, boys. We got 60 minutes left. Hopefully only 60 minutes. Good Lord, if this thing goes to overtime or a shootout like it did last week in Edmonton, like, I'm going to lose my mind.
Did you get a chance to watch the Inside the NHL documentary?
No, I'm going to have it queued up for the weekend because Edmonton doesn't play until Wednesday. So I've got a couple of days. So I'm gonna kind of tease myself for a new season with that. But I'm also not really looking forward to having my heart broken again after the way the Stanley Cup Finals went. So it might take me a minute to get through. I might just cry. I might call you quads and I'll just be sad on FaceTime and I'll be crying and I'll expect some support from you from Vancouver either way. But yeah, I'll watch it this weekend, even though it is going to be painful.
If you end up watching the Hughes episode, you'll have to settle the debate between me and Quads about whether him being in the shot with like 5-6 other reporters and him being in the center of the frame, sure.
Jacob, do we have this? Do we have? Look at it. Okay, Bagged Milk. Am I not? He said I was in the background of this scene. I'm at the forefront of this scene. Like, I'm in the foreground of this scene.
Hughes is the center of attention. Everybody's looking at him. You're in the background.
Okay, so the guy who the documentary is about, yeah, sure, he's in the main spot. But on IMDb, when you go look, I'll get co-credits for this. I should.
Listen, if it's up to me, as far as I see from a Nation Network perspective, there's one star in that shot, and it's Big Dave Clark.
Excellent answer. Shifting gears a bit to the game tonight, the Oilers are going with some different lines as well. It looks like basically their NHL lineup. We're going to get to those in a second, but there's one guy I wanted to ask you about, Vasily Podkolzin. We saw him skate on the line with Connor McDavid in the game the Oilers played against the Canucks. Let's be honest, he looked out of place in that spot, but how has his preseason gone as a whole? I've seen he's been killing penalties. What have you made of Vasily Podkolzin in a short time with the Oilers?
The thing I like about him so far is he's aggressive on the forecheck, isn't he, boys? He's in on the puck pursuit, and I think that he does a really good job of shaking pucks loose when he's in the corner or something like that. I think that's going to be beneficial for an Oilers lineup that has some skill up front. But Podkolzin can get in there and shake pucks loose for his line mates, create opportunities. He's going to find himself in a good spot. He's had plenty of good looks to score so far in the preseason. He only has the one goal, which did come shorthanded, which is interesting because the Oilers have him PKing a little bit. But he's had some really good looks. He just hasn't been able to finish. And I don't know. I was actually planning to ask you guys, does he just not have much finish in his game? Because he generally seems to put himself in reasonable positions to score. He finds himself in some good positions for good looks, and it just kind of hasn't clicked for him on the actual score sheet. But he's producing chances, and I think that for Oilers fans, knowing the draft pedigree and maybe a fresh start might be what he needed. We've got high hopes for him in the sense of, hey, this could be a guy who comes in and contributes. But I also think there's not very much pressure on him to do much offensively. So anything he gives us is kind of going to be gravy. He's putting himself in good spots. I just don't know how much finish he has, boys.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever really had that finishing consistently. I think in his rookie season, he scored 14 goals, and a lot of us thought, okay, the finishing is improving because the reports out of Russia where he's a guy that drives play, creates chances, but just sometimes the production doesn't follow. And so you watch him in his rookie season, and because he's so young, you're thinking, okay, he's figured it out as a finisher in and around the net. He knows how to get open. He knows how to snipe when he's caught the opportunity. And yet in hindsight, that was probably just a shooting percentage bender that he went on in the second half of that rookie season, because since then it's sort of been the same story where can look good at times, can create chances, maybe drives play on a fourth line, but just isn't really ever able to convert. Zooming out a little bit with the Oilers, I know in Vancouver through preseason, the big storylines have kind of been the emergence of Atu Ratu and him sort of surprisingly likely to make the team, likely to start by centering the third line, and the uncertainty around Demko's future and the goaltending. In Edmonton, are there any storylines around how the team or how individual players have looked so far that's going to have an impact at the start of the regular season?
I don't know that so much individual players. Like, if you want to look at an individual player, like at the front of the lineup, if we're talking about the forward, that group is basically set. The top nine's pretty much kind of locked in. The only kind of position that everybody's wondering who's going to get it is the fourth line center, which at the end of the day, because we're a Canadian market, we care about the fourth line center more than most people probably would. Is it going to be Noah Philp, who's a really, really great story? If you're looking for just a good human element of the preseason, Noah Philp is definitely in there. He didn't play last year. He had some personal issues going on, and then he came back in, had a really good preseason, really good training camp, and now he's in the mix to fight for that 4C spot. Is that the sexiest story? No, it's not. But in Edmonton, the big thing is, without question, and it's not close whatsoever, is what's going on the right side of the defense. Right now, if you look at the pairings for tonight's game against the Canucks, you've got Ekholm Bouchard. Okay, that one's standard. You know that one was going to happen. You've got Darnell Nurse and Ty Emberson as your second pairing. Nurse is banged up. He just played in his first preseason game the other day. He's missed all of training camp and preseason. How long is it going to take him to get up to speed? We know, well, last year, Matthias Ekholm was in the exact same spot where he missed all of training camp and preseason, and it took him 6 weeks, 8 weeks to get up to speed. As much as the preseason results don't matter, getting those at bats in and getting your legs moving and playing at game speed is definitely going to be a thing, especially on that second pairing. Like, Nurse hasn't played. Emerson's still very, very raw. Doesn't have a whole lot of games played under his belt at the NHL level. Only a handful with San Jose last year. He's kind of penciled in as a top 4 D-man right now. Can he do it? I hope so. But there's not really anything that says, yes, he absolutely will. And then on the third pairing, you've got Brett Kulak, who's going to be a staple there for the Oilers. He can move up and down a little bit. But beside him tonight, we've got Troy Stecher. And the other option is Josh Brown. And if I'm looking at the two, it's not really close to me. Troy Stecher isn't completely useless. He can move the puck. And as far as I can tell, Quads, you and I have talked about it a bunch of times. The biggest problem with Troy Stecher seems to be that he's just not that tall. Whereas Josh Brown, it's the complete reverse. The guy is very, very big, but can't do anything else. So I don't even know how he's an option. I don't know how he ended up with a 3-year contract. Yes, I said 3-year contract.
3 years?
Yeah, 3 years. I learned this the other day as well.
What?
I think after texting, I was texting with Bag Milk during the Canucks Oilers game, and he's talking to me about Josh Brown. It was one of those Bobby McMahon moments. I had to Google who Josh Brown is. I'm like, this guy got 3 years at 1 million, but he still got 3 years.
Listen, Harmon, if you get the chance to sign one of the worst statistical players in the NHL to a 3-year contract, you got to take it. You got to take it. So I don't even know how that's a conversation. But, like, to me, I look at the right side of pairings on the Oilers D, and I go, whew, that is an ugly group on the right side, specifically, as we get lower in the pairings. I think Ty Emberson's probably going to be okay, but I think he's going to be okay and knowing he's going to be okay are two very different things. So the defense for sure in Edmonton is one of those ones where we're going to wait and see how it goes. It could go fine. It could be a disaster. It could trigger a trade where they have to overpay for an upgrade there sooner than they probably want to. That's going to be one to watch. If you're watching from outside Edmonton or even inside Edmonton, that's where everybody's looking.
I wanted to follow up and ask you a little bit more about Emberson, because you're right. He doesn't have much of a track record at the NHL level yet. Last year in San Jose, before he got hurt, his underlying numbers were surprisingly really, really promising. And it wasn't just in a sheltered, pure third pair type role. What have you seen from him so far? And is there a particularly high bar that he has to clear? Because, I mean, Cody Ceci was in that second pair role last year. It's not like you necessarily need a world beater in that spot.
No, and like you just nailed it, right? Like, if Ty Emberson can come in and play as well as Cody Ceci, which, by the way, boys, is a low bar to clear. He was a disaster. then we're going to be fine. Like ultimately, we're going to be fine. But again, when you've got a guy with 30 career games under his belt, you don't know that he's going to do that, right? The underlying numbers were strong in San Jose. The defensive metrics were pretty rock solid for Ty Emberson, and that gives you hope that he'll be able to come in and do it. But we're still talking about a 24-year-old and a guy with 30 games career on his resume. So to get thrown into the top four on a team who is, hopefully contending for a Stanley Cup, he might be fighting above his weight class, and he might have to do that effectively for the Oilers to have success.
Let's take a look at this Oilers lineup heading into tonight, and what we would think looks like their opening night lineup as well. Bag Milk, I want to ask you about this second line. You got Leon Draisaitl with two new wingers in Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson. We just talked about this the other day for the Canucks lines. We looked at each line and kind of went through what's going to make this line successful. What's this line's path to success? So I want to ask you that about this second line. It's a new look second line. You've got Leon Draisaitl with two new wingers, two capable wingers. It certainly seems. So what's going to lead to the success of this line?
For me, so the interesting thing about the Oilers' second line right now is both the wingers are new, right? So when I think about that line, there's all the skill you need to, in theory, on paper, go, you know what? They've got the makings of a successful second line. They've got one of the best centers in the league in Leon Draisaitl. Jeff Skinner can score. He always has. He tends to do it at 5-on-5. You like that. Victor Arvidsson can score. He's got 30 goal seasons under his belt. With him, though, how healthy is he? He only played 18 games last year for the Kings, and that's going to be a big question mark there. How healthy is Victor Arvidsson going to be? And Jeff Skinner, can he learn where Leon wants him to be? That's going to be his question, because throughout the preseason so far, Jeff Skinner's been very quiet. There's been nights where I go, he is playing, I think, right? I'm pretty sure he's playing. But I also think that's kind of what you get with Jeff Skinner at times. So the makings of a good second line are all there. But the question mark is, can they actually put it together? Just because you look good on paper as a trio that should score a ton of goals, in theory, doesn't mean it's actually going to work out that way on the ice. So to this point in the preseason, they've had some good looks, but nothing really world beating against competition that at a lot of points hasn't been NHL caliber. So how long is it going to take them to figure it out? Or how much leash is Chris Knobloch going to give them to figure it out before he switches it up? Because that first line of Nuge, McDavid, Hyman, they were nails all year last year. So they're going to work. But how much patience are we going to have for the second line? Or are we going to mix it up? So, on paper looks good, but on the ice so far, still a question mark.
There's so much offensive talent on that second line, but the one thing I've also been wondering about is Jeff Skinner in the past has been a defensive liability, doesn't do a lot to drive play. And Leon has had highs and lows where there are stretches where he looks really good from a two-way perspective. And then he's also had seasons in the past where his defensive metrics have been really, really disappointing. Do you have any defensive concerns about that line? Because we know they're likely going to score, but any concern around them holding up from a defensive / two-way perspective?
I mean, that's just Oilers hockey, baby. Who cares about defense when you can score goals, right? So, is there the concern about that line defensively? Sure. I think the hope is probably that they're going to outscore their problems, and they have a chance to do that given the makeup of the three players. But yeah, Harm, if we're talking about the defensive side of the puck, if they're getting hemmed in their own zone, I don't know that that's the trio you want out in the key position at the end of the game if you're up by a goal or something like that. That's not the trio you want out there. Maybe Leon to take draws, but yeah, sure, it's definitely a conversation. But again, as an Edmonton Oilers fan, that just kind of all right, defense is optional. Let's go, boys. That fits within the narrative of what we've always watched.
Let's switch to the Canucks here. Let's pull up the Canucks lines. I want to see what they're looking like tonight. We've got, like I said, a similar lineup to what you would expect on opening night. Obviously, Aatu Ratu in that third line center spot between Niels Höglander and Connor Garland. Harmon, that's obviously been the story of Canucks camp, is Aatu Ratu earning that spot. This is JT Miller's first preseason game. So from that perspective, I'm really excited to see this Miller, Heinen, Besser trio. We saw it at the start of training camp. We didn't see them get any preseason time together. I'm really excited to see this trio together because it looked like they were starting to build something of chemistry in training camp. So Bag Milk, I'll ask you this question. When you look at this lineup and you compare it to what the Oilers faced in the playoffs, like what are the key differences in your mind of like what the Canucks are going to look like this year?
I see a big, tall Frenchman on the right side of the defense that I see as a former friend. Here's the reality: as much as I want to make jokes, the Canucks are going to be a good team, right? They've got some interesting pieces that came in, like DeBrusk, who was the big ticket. How many goals is he going to score beside Elias Pettersson? That's what I'm looking for. He is a player that has been tied to rumors over the past couple of years. He's always tied to Edmonton because he's an Edmonton guy, but he landed a big ticket in Vancouver. Is he going to play up to that contract? That's kind of what I'm wondering. He's got the potential and the skill to. But it's one thing to have the potential and skill to, and there's another thing when you have the pressure of that number weighing you down a little bit. The other one is, like I said, our former friend Vinny Desharnais. Is he going to be slotted in as the 3RD in Vancouver, or is there hope that he could be more than that? As somebody who's watched him the past couple of years, Vancouver would probably be better served to keep him lower in the lineup on the defensive pairings than up in the lineup. He handles the puck like a live grenade at times, and that is going to be an issue for you guys. It's going to be something that you watch. Like Quads, I sent you that screenshot of all the times where I just tweeted Vinny, please, over the last 2 years, and there's a lot of them. So that's going to be something.
A lot of material.
Some of them you're going to have to get used to that. But yeah, like when I look at the lineup, there's plenty of skill on the Canucks line. In the lineup, they've got some really good players that can put the puck in the net, and I'm just curious to see how they do it. How is Elias Pettersson going to look after what, from my opinion, was a very quiet second round against the Oilers for him? And I know that was a big story for you guys in Vancouver too. How's he going to look this year? How long is it going to take JT Miller to get back up to speed if tonight is his first preseason game? So there's a couple of things that I'm looking at, but overall, there's no doubt in my mind who the two best teams in the Pacific Division are, and they're meeting up tonight for the last preseason game.
What's the book on Vinny Desharnais there? Because I think we know that he's never really going to be a puck mover. He's slow, but he's going to be the type of defenseman that's tough, boxing out around the net, can break up plays down low. His arc is interesting to me because it seemed like last season in the regular season, he took a substantial step as far as that third pair seemed like it was driving really, really solid results. Then he kind of fell out of the mix there in the playoffs. And the other thing that I'm wondering about is he spent, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of that time with Brett Kulak, who's kind of like a smooth skating puck mover type. Whereas now the Canucks have him with Derek Forbort, another guy who's big and slow and defends well, but also kind of handles the puck like a grenade. Would that be a concern for you in terms of a stylistic fit compared to what he had in Edmonton?
Listen, as an Oilers fan, I love it. I think it's great. Having two guys who can't move the puck getting pinned in your own zone, I think it's fantastic. I think you guys are doing a great job, and you're going to really enjoy the disaster that pairing probably will be for you at times. But to answer your question, Harm, seriously, Vinny Desharnais, there's going to be times, and I said this to Quads too when he signed, there's going to be times when you love him. The way he defends, the way he clears the puck out of around the crease, the way he kills penalties. A lot of stuff you are going to like about Vinny Desharnais. He is going to give you everything he has on a nightly basis. Where you're not going to like him is when he's got the puck on his stick. Because sometimes it's going to go right up Broadway, right up to the slot to the other team, and you're going to go, how did you think that lane was open? And the answer is, it wasn't. But he thought it was. And my guess is because he's taller than everybody. Sometimes he misses the guys buzzing around by his ankles sometimes. But when I think of Vinny Desharnais, the book on him is he's going to be a hard-nosed defender. He's incredibly physical. Even the other night when the Oilers and Canucks were playing in the preseason and he did the double headlock on two Oilers players, I go, hey, there's my guy. It's on the other side this time. So there's going to be plenty of those moments where he makes you laugh in a good way. And then there's going to be plenty where he has you scratching your head and going, what was going on there? But for the most part, if you lock him into a 3RD spot, you're going to be happy. If he moves up from there, the Canucks could have themselves a problem on their hands.
All right, so add to the depth. Add to that depth. Bag Milk, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We'll get you back. I don't even know when the Canucks play the Oilers next, but it's a tradition here on Canucks Convo to have you on whenever the Canucks face off against the Oilers.
I know I'm a favorite in Vancouver, and congratulations for all the Canucks fans on being able to enjoy my content today. You're welcome.
There you go. There you go. Bag milk. Our thanks to him. Oilers Nation's managing editor. Go check out OilersNation.com. Or don't. You probably don't want to, but there is a good story. The one on Philp. He was talking about him at the start there. Thanks for watching this video. For more great content from Canucks Army, check out Sakaris and Price, Rink Wide Vancouver, or our show, Canucks Conversation. We're your one-stop shop for interviews, breaking news, and a live Canucks postgame show hosted by Jeff Patterson.